Thank you for the unwavering support. Now more than ever, we must remain vigilant. Aurora and the fate of our civilization hang in the balance. The events unfolded with relentless brutality. Kael Dravik, the ruthless ruler of Dravania, unleashed a fierce offensive against Zalthar, a small nation whose cultural identity and spirit of resistance had endured through the centuries. But Dravik's ambition was far more sinister than mere territorial conquest. He sought not only to expand his domain but to utterly annihilate Zalthar and its system of government, aiming to erase its legacy and bend its people to his will without mercy. Lior Vastrin, the leader of Zalthar, faces a dire threat that endangers the sovereignty of his nation. Dravik, commanding a totalitarian regime that scorns democracy, has bombed civilian cities, spreading chaos and suffering. His troops have crossed the border under the pretense of reordering the region. But in reality, they seek to subjugate the population through terror and violence. As Viridiana watches the conflict escalate with growing concern, Elios, trapped in his own political isolation, remains oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Instead of condemning the attack, he lashes out at Vastrin, mocking his supposed weakness, and demanding money in exchange for assistance. His arrogant and dismissive stance not only leaves Zalthar without the crucial support it needs, but also drives other international leaders, though critical of Dravik, to distance themselves from Aurora, rejecting Elios and his relentless posture. The rise of Elios was both inevitable and unexpected. For years, the citizens of Aurora had witnessed a succession of leaders incapable of resolving the economic crisis or ensuring stability. Corruption, inefficiency, and bureaucratic oppression had eroded trust in traditional politics, leaving the nation vulnerable and desperate for change. In this void of hope, Elios emerged, a forceful anti-establishment figure determined to challenge the status quo and embody the promise of a new era, though not everyone understood the cost of his arrival. Elios was the embodiment of magnetism and extravagance. He did not fit the mold of a conventional politician, nor did he intend to. His public life was a spectacle of excess, limitless gambling, ostentatious displays of wealth and power in gilded buildings where his face adorned every corner of the city. Aurora, trapped in disillusionment, saw in him a figure that defied established norms, a presence impossible to ignore. To many, he was more than just a spectacle. He was the embodiment of brutal authenticity. His aggression was not seen as a flaw, but as proof of an unbreakable will. As his rhetoric gained more followers, the lines between politics and spectacle blurred. His rise seemed inevitable, yet no one could predict how far he would go or what impact he would have on Aurora's fate. It was a phenomenon that defied all logic, but in hindsight, it had always been destined to happen. The media machinery that propelled Elios before his rise to power operated with surgical precision, designed to consolidate his influence with no margin for error. With an impeccable strategy, he seized control of television and social media, turning every screen into a reflection of his image. He appeared in both entertainment shows and incendiary speeches that captivated the collective attention and polarized audiences. His mastery of narrative and calculated use of sharp, provocative statements transformed him into an omnipresent force, an inescapable figure whose shadow loomed over Aurora long before he officially claimed power. With the promise of an economic revival, Elios fueled the illusion of a golden future. He presented Aurora not just as the next global technological and financial powerhouse, but as the epicenter of an unprecedented era of prosperity. Under his leadership, he assured, the nation would not only achieve greatness but redefine the global standards of success. His obsession with gold went beyond aesthetics. It was the ultimate emblem of wealth and stability, a tangible reflection of a dream that, according to him, was within everyone's reach. Meanwhile, his adversaries, the representatives of Golden Rebirth and Voice of Liberty, saw their attempts to halt his advance crumble. They underestimated his ability to mobilize and the impact of his rhetoric, convinced that his past alone would be enough to discredit him. However, far from weakening him, their criticism, devoid of solid proposals, only reinforced his status as the banner of insurrection against the traditional system. With every attack, Elios not only endured but grew stronger, cementing himself as the undeniable protagonist of a new era in Aurora. Driven by the desperation for change and captivated by Elios's theatricality, the people of Aurora elevated him to power, hoping he would be their salvation. However, once in government, his arrogance and disregard for the rules quickly shattered the illusion, plunging the nation into deep uncertainty. It was in those early days that the Council of Sages decided to carefully observe his every move. For Elios, his victory was an absolute affirmation of his vision, a mandate to rule without restrictions. He surrounded himself with unwavering followers, many from his entertainment and gambling empire, ensuring his influence remained unquestionable. The presidential headquarters, once a symbol of Aurora's history, was transformed into a monument to his personal grandeur. Towering golden columns and screens that projected his image across every corner. With imposing speeches, he promised unprecedented wealth, a splendor that only he could guarantee. The council was quick to detect alarming signs. What began as a financial and technological transformation strategy soon took on unsettling tones. Elios, through his diplomatic provocations, sowed uncertainty within the international community, destabilizing alliances and generating unforeseen tensions. While markets awaited a structured transition from Aurorín to the cryptocurrency Aurorín-X, he seemed to shift his focus toward consolidating his public image, expanding his dominance over the nation beyond mere economic control. His speeches, increasingly grandiose, no longer spoke of stability or progress, but of his own figure and his role as the undisputed architect of Aurora's destiny. The financial transition, crucial for global confidence, was relegated to the background as Elios multiplied the symbols of his authority, ensuring that his presence was inescapable in every aspect of national life. Then, the first tensions with the justice system emerged. What initially seemed like an unstoppable administration began encountering unexpected obstacles. Legal institutions, previously marginalized, started to resist decisions that challenged the balance of power. Elios' rhetoric, once celebrated as a symbol of change, took on tones of confrontation and defiance, generating uncertainty among authorities. The apparent solidity of his regime began to show dangerous cracks, foreshadowing a conflict that would forever alter Aurora's destiny. First cracks in Elios' rhetoric. What was once presented as a transformative project now raised doubts, and the most traditional sectors that once supported him started questioning his growing disregard for the institutions that had cemented Aurora's greatness and prestige. The unwavering faith in his leadership was beginning to erode under decisions that seemed to undermine the fundamental principles upon which the nation had been built. The companies that initially embraced his financial revolution now viewed the direction of Aurorín-X with growing concern. What was meant to be the cornerstone of a new economic model was taking on unsettling nuances. Instead of being a symbol of stability, the cryptocurrency threatened to become a tool of manipulation. Yet another mechanism for Elios to strengthen his grip over the nation. The vision of a prosperous future was increasingly overshadowed by the specter of uncertainty, hinting that the promised golden era might crumble before it could ever be realized. The Council of Sages' dilemma. Faced with the upheaval shaking Aurora, the Council of Sages found themselves at a crucial crossroads. They had two possible paths: openly challenge Elios and fight for the independence of the financial tribunal, risking a crisis that could plunge the country further into chaos. Operate from the shadows, seeking to influence his decisions without direct confrontation, ensuring that Aurorín-X remained beyond his absolute control. As the council carefully weighed each strategy, Elios stunned the nation with a radical move. He announced that Aurora would impose tributes on its international allies for access to its financial system. It was a bold, calculated maneuver to strengthen his economic dominance, but one with potentially devastating consequences. The global community, already unsettled by the unpredictable nature of his leadership, interpreted this decision as a direct threat to the established economic order. Tensions escalated, and the eyes of international leaders turned toward Aurora, assessing just how far Elios was willing to go in defying the norms that upheld global financial stability. The council knew time was working against them, and any misstep could seal the nation's fate. The Council of Sages knew that the central problem remained Elios. Although avoiding internal conflict was their priority, they understood that they had to weaken his power before trust in Aurora completely collapsed, both domestically and internationally. Thus, they launched a strategic maneuver, precisely designed to limit his influence without provoking a civil war. Key measures to restrain Elios to neutralize his control over the economy, they froze his access to Aurorín-X, ensuring that the new cryptocurrency remained transparent and under the regulation of the financial tribunal. They also insisted on preserving the Constitution, guaranteeing that Congress retained its authority and could block any attempt by the president to govern without restrictions. They knew that political stability required military backing, so they involved the army in a pact of democratic protection. The armed forces vowed to safeguard the nation, not Elios' personal interests. Thank you for your support. If you're enjoying this content and want to see more, don't forget to give it a like. Your support helps keep the project going, and every like motivates us to bring you even more exciting videos. Stay tuned for what's next.